everybody.
Hello, everybody.
We're gathered here today to talk to you on the It's Not Just You podcast.
Oh, that's so annoying.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys.
Hello. So, today, I'm going to give you a little teaser. I'm going to give you a little spoiler that today we're going to be talking about parents.
Yep. Parents. This is a topic we've never approached.
Yes, it's not. We'll go into more in a minute, but I just have a question that I want to ask Rach.
Okay.
Before we crack in, just get the podcast going on a
very intrigued,
fun, lighthearted note. But I mean, it's kind of deep, but kind of fun at the same time. What kind of parent do you think you'll be?
Oh.
Do you think you'll be strict? Do you think you'll be easygoing, play in the mud?
Well,
run wild, kids be free. Like what vibe?
I'm trying to envision myself.
If you were going to be a
exactly,
parent,
that is the key thing.
If you were going to be a parent,
if I was privileged enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But equally, I don't actually know if I want to be a parent. But anyway, that's
side note.
That's a story for another time.
If you were to have a child in your possession, how would you be?
I don't know. I don't.
I think you'd be quite strict.
Ooh, okay. Why?
Because I think that you would you're to the line. You'd just be like, there'd be no messing about.
I don't know. I think if I was to be a parent, I'd have to really sit and think about how I'd want to do it. Because I think...
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I just think, I think my kind of go-to could be to be quite... Oh, I just don't want to say this, but like a bit like stressy or a bit like, come on, like... But actually, I really wouldn't want to be like that. I would want to be that parent that doesn't shout.
Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario. Get back from a long day at work. Your kids are at home. Let's say you've had a babysitter or something come around, because obviously you're not going to leave them on their own.
Oh wow, I've got a baby. I've got a nanny.
You've got an au pair living with you. You get back after a long day at work and you find that your kid has scribbled in a Sharpie all over the sofa that you spent like $2,000 on.
Oh my days.
What do you do?
I mean, I'd be fuming, but I don't think I would actually like at the end of the day in that situation, it's like, what can you do? If they're like a 2-year-old kid, you can't, it's not like they...
What if they're 8?
I mean, there would be some serious consequences.
Like what? What are your consequences?
Oh, so I've not thought through my parenting
Are you like
plan.
a naughty step kind of vibe, or go to your
Yeah,
room?
I think it's really basically what I would want to be is like a firm parent, but really loving. But it's like I would just want to communicate like you don't draw all over the sofa and get away with that. Like there will be consequences.
I like that.
But I would try my goal would be to be so calm. Like I'd love to be like so calm, so measured. Like it's just like Nathan,
can
I have a word? No, okay, not have a word. Anyway, right, okay.
Can I
what
put
would
you
you
for a
do?
chat?
What would you do?
Just absolutely go mental.
No, you wouldn't though.
What do you think
I
I'd do?
actually can't imagine you. I'd love to see you like shower a kid.
Were you going to say you can't imagine me angry?
No, I
just
can't
imagine me being a
you
parent.
angry. I just can't imagine you like losing it. Like,
I'm trying to
down
think if
here
like at work
now.
there's been
Yeah.
times.
That's what I would want to see you even at work. I'd love to see, because then actually I can imagine you when I think of you with the young people.
I think I don't think my natural instinct is to shout.
No.
So I just don't think, not that it would never happen, but.
So what would you do? You've walked into the house. What would you do?
I think I'd definitely be the parent that's more like the I'm disappointed in you vibe.
Yeah.
Like I'd probably be like, you've genuinely upset me by doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually really upset. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than like, screaming. Because that's
Yeah.
just not in my personality. Like, I just don't really shout or scream.
I
I'd
think-
have to be really, really, really wound up to get to that point.
I think it's also, that is just good, isn't it? Where you talk to your kids like they're adults.
Not us
Like-
going into some sort of parenting. Like,
It's like, no, I am actually really upset. You've really upset
it's
me
like
by doing that.
I
to
saved
a
loads of
4-year-old.
money to buy those
Yeah.
sofas and you just ruined them.
You will now work
Cool.
your whole life to pay me back.
Yeah. That would be me.
Oh, guys.
It's good to think about
all
these
I'm going to
things.
say is parenting feels like a long way off for me.
Yeah.
It just really isn't something
gosh,
that
yeah.
I think about or envision, to be honest. But some people do. They
Yeah.
spend their whole lives waiting to be mums or
Yeah.
dads.
Neither is right, neither's wrong.
Neither's right or wrong, but
Not feeling like that's on the horizon anytime
no,
soon.
not for me personally.
No, it's good to know that.
Good. Brilliant. Well, on that note, let's dive into this week's episode. What are we discussing today, Soph?
So today we are going to be chatting, or our It's Not Just You topic of the day is, it's not just you whose relationship with their parents has changed.
Ooh,
So
it's changed.
talking about
You've changed.
I guess your relationship with your parents is always changing and evolving. But I think we're probably going to be speaking more specifically today about the point where you step into adulthood, you are no longer a child, maybe you've left home, and you're just seeing the shift that comes with that, the shift in your parents' and yours relationship, how that feels, the dynamics, all that fun stuff.
All that comes with growing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what we're going to be chewing on today.
Yeah. And I think for most people there will have come this point. Oh,
Yeah.
That didn't make sense. But like for most people it could be earlier for some, it could be later for others, but there's that moment of you growing up really. And therefore in light of you growing up, viewing your parents through a slightly different lens, or just compared to where you're a kid, you know, the way that you relate to your parents, I guess every year as you grow older changes.
Yes. And I think when we were chatting about this episode, something that we realised that is quite strange is that because of the way a family is kind of built, everyone has these roles, whether it's mum, dad, brother, sister, child's parent, you know, auntie, uncle, grandma. Like everyone has these roles in a family, which are not really, well, they don't change. So you're a child to your parent when you're 2, and you're still a child to your parent when you're 22, 32. So it's this
52.
strange thing of like, I'm not a child, but in this family dynamic, my role is the child.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it means that some things don't feel that different at points where, you know, even for me now, I think we've spoken about this before in a podcast, where you go home maybe for Christmas or something and you can very easily take on this child role of, it almost feels like you're back to being 16, and that's very much kind of the place that you're holding in your family. But then there's stuff that starts to feel maybe a bit jarring, where you're like, yeah, but I'm not a child anymore.
Yeah.
Like I'm an adult and you're an adult and we're 2 adults talking to each other, but there's still that dynamic of parent-child. It's all just a bit weird.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's basically that thing, I think, that you realise as you're getting older of like, you become more independent in some areas. But then there are, I think, just some aspects of life where you will just kind of always revert to depending on your parents whilst they're there, which I think is good and natural, where it's like, you know, in a ideal, healthy parent-child relationship, you do look to your parents, you know, for guidance or for help or for support. And also I think at this point it's probably good to say that's not the case for everyone. Obviously there are numerous cases where unfortunately like a parent hasn't provided that role for their child, and that's really hard and difficult. And obviously even in this podcast, Soph and I are privileged enough to have parents who have really supported and loved us, and we're obviously aware that we're speaking from that experience. But yeah, there are things that you kind of always naturally look to your parents for, no matter how old you are. But then at the same time, you're growing in independence, and there are other things you want to be independent in. And it's like this weird combination of like you're trying to grow up and be an adult, and you're realizing things about yourself and your parents, but then also you are still like you say, you go home and you kind of become a teenager again, or your car breaks down and the first thing you do is ring your dad.
I think it must be very strange from the parent end as well, because they're suddenly now in this place of going from, my child needs everything from me. Like, even, going back to as well, when you're a baby or very young, you literally need everything from your parents. You're so weak and vulnerable. And then you gradually get to a point, like you said, more independence. And then it's this weird almost point of, I guess, being a parent. And I can imagine it's almost like they need me, but they don't need me. And they need me for these things, but not these things anymore. And almost...
Yeah, like they ring me when they've got a problem.
Yeah.
But then like when it comes to just, you know, wanting to hear about their life or their day, they can't be bothered.
It's like, cool.
Like that's probably quite hard as a parent.
Yeah. Sorry, parents.
Sorry, guys.
So yeah, what do you think? Can you think of anything in particular that's felt like a big shift in your parents' relationship, maybe since leaving home or since stepping into adulthood more?
Yeah, I think one big thing for me growing up, I think particularly at 18, moving out, just I think in light of me learning more about myself, or yeah, essentially just where you make that transition from being like a kid and a teenager who doesn't really do a lot of like introspective thinking to then like realizing, oh, like I've got these fears, or I, you know, struggle with this, or I struggle with that. And then I feel like another part of that kind of self-realization is like, oh yeah, my parents like are their own humans with their own thoughts and feelings and fears and backgrounds and lives. Like I feel like I really distinctly remember a moment of being like, oh my goodness, like my parents had whole lives before me. Like that was probably younger, maybe around like 15, but you know, like where your parents might reference something from when they were growing up or when they were at uni or something like that, and you're like, oh yeah, like
Your
do you know what I
life didn't
mean?
begin when I was born.
Yeah, but I think one big thing that kind of I realized was like my parents are people themselves. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, because I think that shapes a lot of your conversations. And actually, I guess as you become an adult, you start having different types of conversations or relating to your parents in different ways. And maybe you have to have conversations that are more in depth, or I don't know, even you realize you've got different opinions about different things to them, and you're having to actually navigate, as two adults, how do we communicate? How do we relate to each other? And I think that is a big thing, like you were saying, knowing, do you know what? My parents aren't immune from all the things that I also feel as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, where I know I have insecurities, or I have things that I'm fearful of, or I have things that I worry about. I guess when you're a child, you don't look at your parents as being susceptible to those things.
Yeah.
It's like you're a parent and you
100%.
just
Yeah.
are secure.
Your
and
role
you
is to look after me.
and you just, you've got it all together. And in reality, it's not, it's not the case.
Yeah.
Or like they have bad days where they probably just
Yeah.
like, well, I just was in a bad mood that day. It's like, no, you
Yeah.
can't have a bad mood. You can't be in a bad mood because you're supposed to just be my mum and be consistently the same every day.
Yeah. And I think even though it actually just sounds really obvious, I do think there is kind of that realization moment for everyone where it's like, oh yeah, they're not these perfect humans, like you say, who are immune to struggles and everything like that. Like they themselves, are struggling with different things. And like, even though it's like completely makes sense, because even now I think where you get to the age where you one day could envision being a parent, you're like, it's not like when I become a parent I change at all. Like, I'm still gonna have all the things that I'm like battling with, or where even I think, like I say, when you get older and you become more self-aware, or you learn, you know, more about yourself, or the way you respond to things, and they're not always positive. It's not like when you become a parent suddenly you're perfect and all those things change. So even though it's obvious that, yeah, actually my parents are just people, I do still think it's almost kind of a bit jarring when that realization first hits.
And I think I don't really know what is the right or wrong thing to do in this situation, but I do think there's an element of, when you're a parent, you're probably not going to sit your 7-year-old child down and go, I'm really insecure about all these things. I don't know, but I'm trying to work out if you should or shouldn't do that. I'm erring on the side of you shouldn't. I don't know why. Anyway, but essentially that whole thing of growing up, I think the role of a parent partly is to be protective of your children and almost lead them. And in doing that, yes, I do believe as parents there should be moments where you're vulnerable about the things you're going through and how you're feeling. But I do think you probably wouldn't talk, like, I'm thinking if I was a parent, I don't think I'd talk to my child in the same way that I would talk to you. Like, if I was having a real struggle about something, I don't think I would lay that all on my children and like expose them to all the kind of stuff that's maybe going on in my life. There is a I think maybe an element of, you want to protect them from some of that in order to lead them, like I said. So I think then when you become an adult, you maybe haven't had lots of conversations with your parents actually about who they are, the insecurities they have, the fears they have. And I still, like I said, don't really know the answer. I don't know, like, should that be a conversation that you should have? Should that be something that you actually start to unpack and go deep with your parents on? I don't know.
I think, like, from what I can tell, or from talking to, you know, friends or people over the course of uni, I think sometimes it's just often initiated by the child, i.e. like, I actually think, you know, reflecting on uni, I had loads of conversations with different friends. Like I said, in that kind of key moment of self-discovery, it almost always leads back to kind of childhood and your parents and the way you were brought up. And within that, I think I've heard of quite a few instances where, like, a child has kind of gone and then critiqued their parents, or had quite a challenging conversation with their parents, which obviously then provides space for their parents to, like, explain some of why they may have acted like that or been like that, or, you know. So I reckon whether or not conversations are had, a lot of the time, you know, it's as the kid grows up that they realize more about their parents without their parents having to, like, sit the kid down and be like, this is what I struggle with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But do you think even as an adult, you should know the full ins and outs of your parents' insecurities, fears, struggles? Do you think that that's something that should always almost be protected, and you know, there should be that role of parent to child that's maintained, or that relationship where maybe you're not telling them everything? Or do you think as soon as you become an adult, it should just be kind of a free for all of, we can have a adult conversation about this?
I don't know. I don't really think there needs to be this moment of, like, them like coming to the kid, and saying all this stuff. But I think depending on how, like, much almost the kid wants to press and learn more and work out potentially why their parents were like that, and therefore why they're like that, maybe naturally over time it does just become unpicked. Like, I don't think it should be necessarily a thing of hiding stuff, but I equally don't know if it should be like, I'm gonna outlay it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. Like, that you're not gonna, you know, put a date in your diary of, like, family secret exposing time for 5 hours where we all go round. Yeah, no, I get that. It'll be, I guess it's a gradual thing that just slowly comes out.
But, like, how did you find that? How, I guess, have you found that process of realizing, like, oh, my parents, you know, aren't perfect, or, like...
I think it's it's like you were saying, it's that realization moment of, oh flip, yeah, my parents are actually people, not just mum and dad. Like, they have names and they have a life, and a life that was, going on before I existed. Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's still an expectation that you have from your parents to be your parents. And so I don't know. In some ways, I think it's like a bit of a shattered illusion
Yeah.
of I thought, and that sounds really savage, like, oh, I thought you were this and you're not, but more just coming to terms with that acknowledgement moment. Okay, my parents have stuff, and do you know what I mean? I think it's something that you can't necessarily just grasp in a moment. It kind of takes time to almost, well, for me anyway, just work out, okay. And not that it's hard to explain. It's not like, oh, now I know this, like I can't even look at my parents in the same way and they're these different people.
Yeah.
I think for me it's more just been, how do I relate to my parents as an adult? And even where, I don't live at home anymore. I don't have these big long uni summer holidays where I just go home and then see them. It's, okay, when am I gonna find the time to, connect with them or go home or make the time for them? And I think where we're talking about relationships changing with parents, I think for me that's the big thing of like, okay, what do I want my relationship with my parents to look like now? I don't just have the comfortability or the ease of just living in the same house as them. And even just not comparing that to what other people's relationship with their parents look like, where, some people ring their parents every day, some people ring them once a year, some people go home every weekend or once a month, or, you can look at how everyone does relationship with their parents and easily start comparing, oh, what does that mean for my relationship with my parents? Is it not as good? Is it better? Should I be doing more? Should I be doing less? Do I rely on them too much? Do I not rely on them enough? I think that's been a big thing for me, is just actually working out, everything else removed, what do I want my relationship with my parents to look like? And what does it mean for me to be a daughter to them and allow them to be my parents? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also working out, even like we're saying, where you do have this realization of like, oh, there might be things I disagree with my parents on and stuff like that. It's like working out when to challenge them and when not to. And like, even the first time, you kind of have to have a conversation with your parents where it is slightly like critical or challenging, or you're explaining to them that maybe the way they did that or did this was difficult for you growing up. Like, they are tricky conversations to have, and it's really hard to almost navigate the best way to do it, because it's also just, in any conversation like that, very easy for your parents to be defensive or take offense from it. So I think that in itself is almost a whole thing to navigate. Of, I think even in our generation, where it's more and more common for us to be self-aware and to have counselling and to work out why we're like this or like that, like, it opens up this whole new realm of then like childhood and kind of reflecting on it. And I know for a lot of people that is just quite an interesting one to navigate, of how much you kind of talk about it and share with your parents. And I think if there's space to do that, and it can be done in kind of like a healthy way, that can be really good and really like healing. But then there's also times of working out when, yeah, I guess more widely speaking, if your parents just have different opinions on things, like, that's okay, and you realize you're a different person to your parents,
Because I think there's also an element of, to some extent, the past is in the past. So
Yeah.
if there's one, you have this big realization of maybe, oh, this thing in that happened in the past with my parents, I've realized maybe had this impact on me, and now I've come to the point of maybe wanting to have a conversation with them. I think that's good, but like you say, I think it's worth thinking about almost, I think there's well, I was going to say, what's the point in saying it? And maybe the point is just, I feel like I need to tell them, and I feel like I just need to be honest. But equally, if it's just like, I don't know, just digging at the past, like, it's like, well, they can't go back and change it. Do you know what I mean? So maybe it is that you just need to say, oh, you know, this is what happened. It made me feel like this. And I just felt like I needed to share that.
Yeah.
That's still a valid reason. But you can, I think, very easily get caught just going around in circles where essentially it's like, well, your parents can't go back and reverse time and change that. So
it's like it's that tricky balance, isn't it? Because then also I know for some people or friends I've had, sometimes you almost just need the space to express it. Your parents hear it, digest it, like even sometimes apologize, and that can be really healing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess what we're saying, guys, is like, it's not just you who just finds it all a bit complex.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of top tips or thoughts? Anyone who's listening to this who's maybe just feeling like relationship with their parents is difficult at the moment, and more from that lens of where things have changed. I mean, relationship with parents can be difficult for all sorts of reasons, but specifically speaking about maybe they've just left home and they're like, how on earth do I connect with my parents when I don't live with them? Or maybe they feel like they need to have a conversation. Like, do you have anything that you would just say that's been helpful for you?
I think part of it, I feel like we say this a lot, but some of it is just acknowledging the change of like, okay, yeah, it is going to look different. I'm not at school anymore. I'm not 16. I'm not living under the same roof. Ruth. It's my mum's name. I'm not living under the same roof. And therefore, there is going to be like an adjustment here. I think trying to almost set, not like expectations, but like maybe just having a chat with your parents and being like, you know, oh, this is how often I can call you. Like, you know, just almost naming it. Because I know even for me, when I went to uni, it was a bit of a like, oh, I just don't have a lot of time, and kind of setting expectations with your parents, or like working out how much you'd like to go home and see them. And I think like you almost just have to kind of establish those new routines. But I am just always an advocate for speaking about things. So I would just say, like, if your parents seem like they're a bit off, or like you feel like they're not putting in enough effort, or whatever it is, like, I would just suggest trying to have a conversation about it, really. What about you?
I think that, what do I think? Even what I was saying at the start about, or what we were both saying about, you know, this kind of realization that your parents have stuff too. And actually you moving out or there being more distance in your relationship is actually probably really hard for them as well. And I think it's really easy because it kind of that is almost you fully living in that child role, is thinking very one-sidedly about my parents are here for me, and how can they serve me and all of that. And actually, and I've definitely not done this well at points, but trying to acknowledge that it's a change for them as well. And it's probably been quite hard for them to work out, how do I navigate things with you, and how do I relate to my daughter or my son now that they don't live at home. And so giving or having grace for them as well, as like they're working it all out as well. They might have never done it, and you know, it's different, you know, even if they have, where you maybe have older siblings, it's going to look different for each one. And so it's their first time doing all this stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that is key. I remember we wrote down
I think it's like it's your parents' first time at life too, or something cheesy like that. Can you find it?
Everyone's doing life for the first time.
Boom.
True that. So we gotta have a bit of grace for the old
rents,
madre and padre.
So
shout out mum and dad.
Big up.
Definitely gonna have clicked on this episode. Guys, I hope something was relatable in that.
Yeah.
Don't really know what we've just said.
I hope it just felt comforting to know that there's other people out there that are navigating these things, and chat about it with your mates.
Yeah. And also, if there's something specific in this episode that you're like, oh, like, would be great to talk more about that specific thing, then let us know, because I feel like this was kind of a general overview.
Yeah. So yeah.
But yeah, parents, hey, maybe we'll listen back to this episode one day if we were ever parents and think, oh gosh, you too, really.
Shut up.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed.
And we'll see you
In our
next
episode.
Bye, everyone.